Hello and welcome to Indie 5. As it has been the tradition, we review 5 indie albums that have already passed their due release date. And today we start a band from United States, which is kind of a cult status act for quite different reasons. This one is called Uada or Uada. I'm not exactly sure how Americans want to pronounce it, but since it's an American band, they have the right to pronounce it whatever way they please. Now, this one is their second album called Cult of Dying Sun, and this one is pretty neat cover. As you can see, this is kind of a digi sleeve, which reveals the whole cover image. I'm gonna show it to you like previously. Here's the CD, pretty plain, runic idea, and obviously the booklet and the jewel case piece. Now, Uada, like I like to pronounce it, wrong way probably, is kind of a weird band because it has gotten quite a lot of negativity from a lot of underground black metal people, and for a reason that is or has been around for quite a while. Those who are familiar with bands such as Wolves in the Throne Room are already quite familiar with this kind of which way this is supposed to be, that way obviously, are quite familiar with the stuff here. Nice layout, by the way. I'm familiar with this kind of negativity when it comes to so-called green metal bands, as I like to call them. That is kind of a black metal-ish music, but lyric-wise, ideological-wise, if you read their interviews and whatnot, that is, one can clearly see the difference, or hear the difference between the bands coming from a green metal scene versus typical black metal scene. And usually, I'm not saying this is always the case, but usually these green metal bands are more or less kind of a modern hipster bands or even hippie bands to some extent from United States of America, whereas traditional black metal bands always, or more or less, always come from Europe, mostly Nordic countries, but of course countries like Germany and France as well. France, that is. Now, Uada has been put into the same box with Wolves in the Throne Room and the like, and for a reason that they are kind of a non-satanic. They don't want to have any ties to religion. It's all about being, kind of a safe space and all that stuff. Yet musically, they want to go to the lengths of being kind of a extreme metal. But like the second album actually proves, it's not very extreme. I'll try to describe it first, and then you give me the idea what I'm talking about here. Now, Cult of Dying Sun is 55 minutes of what people usually call atmospheric black metal. Mostly fast tempo, but also some mid-tempo parts. There are melodies which are sort of melancholic, and everything is kind of this atmospheric stuff. That is not very harsh, not raw, not violent, but more kind of a soothing kind of a stuff. So once again, related to bands such as Wolves in the Throne Room, which I guess in a way is one of those pioneering green metal bands. And one can actually kind of sense that this is not one of those very aggressive satanic black metal bands, because this is actually quite the opposite when we're talking about bands like, say, Marduk, Dark Funeral, Mayhem, Burzum, all stuff. Well, some Burzimic ideas maybe are there, because after all, it's more about this atmosphere than going violent, in your face, church burning, tank shooting, whatnot. And also this is very different, from this kind of early second wave bands that was so much tapping into the first wave. Think of Bathory and, Dark Funeral, Still Dick Frost, all that stuff, which were kind of a raw, kind of a grim and mystic even. Whereas this is more like kind of a homage to nature and whatnot. Now, it's not this video's topic to talk about so much about these atmospheric parts. I guess this is already going too far. But I could say this is kind of a safe version of what this kind of atmospheric black metal is all about. So, in a comparison, this is what Starbucks metal in a way of black metal or green metal, like I like to put it. Or if you think Green Day is punk, and then you compare it to more like real, more aggressive punk, then you get the idea. Uada is more on the Green Day of black metal or atmospheric black metal. So do whatever you need to do with that information. Music wise, I think this is pretty decent. Actually, it's more good than just decent, but it kind of feels like it's not very polished. It feels like, or maybe it's too polished. It kind of feels like there's a lot of lengthy songs which just basically go nowhere. It's more like post black metal album in so many ways. And while I kind of understand why it's getting success, you know, and, you know, people liking it, well, it's the same thing as with, you know, bands like Dimmu Borgir. When you know, polish all the edges so that they are not cutting you, they are not violent anymore, they are not too aggressive, and the production is quite sweet in a way, then it's exactly what we have here. So very unblack metal in a way, but of course I'm not talking white metal bands here. So should you happen to be one of those green metal fans, then this is definitely for you. First rest, I don't know, I'm not a hater of this band, but I certainly cannot find the true magic that lies here. Quite good, but well, won't be going to my collection. Now I'm just gonna combine a second album right away here, because that is what I also got to listen to earlier today and write a written review. This one's called Alda, and curiously enough, it happens to be from the very same genre. This is their debut album, which has been released this year, already released originally in 2009. This is some 32 minutes or 33 minutes of basically same idea, kind of music, that is atmospheric green metal stuff, very nature oriented, very much doing the cliches what the Wolves in the Throne Room and the like are doing. Nice packaging, this also, pretty nice digi-sleeve. This is also by Eisenwald, which released at Uada CD, but this is musically in a different league and not in a good way. This is more kind of a unoriginal stuff. Very much, very generic, very bulk kind of atmospheric green metal. Basically everything there was already done by Uada a lot better. This is just, you know, having those very generic riffs going no place. And a little bit more rawish production, but then again, not too raw. So it's kind of a compromise between two worlds. Not being violent, not being exactly melancholic, not being, you know, hostile or overwhelming, not then again being inhuman either. It's just kind of lukewarm of a release from the very same genre. So unless you're a huge fan of this kind of black metalish music, I can't really recommend, you know, checking Alda. I mean, it's just basically over there, but to me this feels very much like a lengthy demo of some sorts. There's clearly a potential to be a lot better, but then again, not worthwhile listening to after a few spins, at least not in my opinion. But the next one is more interesting, or is it? Alda's second album came originally out in 2009, if I remember correctly, and unfortunately it really didn't evolve that much from the self-titled original first album. Now, Tahoma is the name of the second album, consisting of 50 minutes of more green metal, or Cascadian black metal as Americans or Canadians like to say it. However, I don't think it's much to do with black metal, since the themes are so different, and musically, well, there are some overlapping, but not that much. Unless you think that all the black metal is some Burzum spin-off or something, this so-called green metal is not that much a black metal thing. Now, fine looking digipack as the debut album, as a re-release that is, also released by Eisenwald, or actually this is not digipack but digi-sleeve. There is no jewel tray or CD tray there as a jewel case. So all the lyrics are nicely there, and well, the artwork looks pretty nice. Now, 50 minutes of doing really lengthy tracks, that is about 10 minutes each, is too much in most cases. Now, that might be a subject for an opinion video, but to put it in a short way. Now, you have to be quite a master with your guitar, bass, or whatever your instrument is if you're gonna make a 10-minute song really interesting and good one. If one of the best all-time metal instrumental tracks was Orion by Metallica's past Cliff Burton, and that was about 8 minutes long. If that is one of the rare pieces where this extra lengthy instrumental is actually gonna work, pretty much all the rest is not, you know, on par with that one. Now, sometimes, especially in post-metal or post-rock, this kind of a lengthy, kind of a rubber band effect where you just keep spinning the song like web does it, spider does its web, web does its spider. That sometimes might work, but when you're basically filling a black metal-ish song with very generic, very unoriginal riffing, with very recycled black metal riffs, it's not gonna work. Alda sounds at its best when it's basically copycatting Finnish melodic black metal with some melancholic parts in it, but it's not what the album is mostly made of. Really, really generic stuff in a way that it becomes almost something that you might fall asleep with. Now, I'm not saying this album is bad, but it's quite mediocre, and this kind of a somewhat lo-fi production for this kind of music is not exactly a favor. It's more or less kind of hiding the weakness of the songwriting. And while I know and understand that some people just like this kind of green metal where the songs are lengthy and feels like they're never gonna reach the climax, which is in fact true, I cannot really recommend this album to anybody except those who are just worshipping bands like Wolves in the Throne Room, Uada, and of course Alda, Panopticon maybe. It's just too much with this album, with too mediocre output. Next on we move to thrash metal, and this one is from Germany. Not very old band. This is already their second album called Ruins, and well, what you can say, this is D-beat, punk, hardcore and thrash metal with a very basic kind of a songwriting. Very aggressive, very in your face kind of stuff. Simple, fast tempo, not much diversity with all the songs. And if you're old school thrash fanatic, you might find this actually a little bit tempting. However, the lack of diversity makes this album a little bit dull. After a couple of spins, you have pretty much figured it all, and there's very little change with the songs. And one of the most boring parts is actually the vocal parts, which is then again just kind of a almost like black metal-ish, or at least hardcore-ish, screamy type of stuff. Not that much melodic or skilled musicianship when it comes to vocals. So Ruins is quite nice, an album for thrash metal, but then again a little bit somewhere in between, like lacking the final punch, so to speak. Interesting band, but not there yet. And this Indie 5 will be concluded by a Norwegian black metal band which already made its great debut album already 2017 called, what it was called, Aurum, which means gold in Latin. So eventually this is all about silver because it's called Argentum, which means silver in Latin. Now, there's been some information that these would be leftover songs from Urarv's debut album. I don't know if it's true, maybe. However, this is a 25-minute mini CD, basically complementing, not complicating, complementing the full-length album and doing quite nice job with that. However, I don't think Argentum exactly reaches the level of the debut album, because these are a little bit more complicated songs and maybe not as honed as it is. However, you can pretty much figure out this is the same band. There are some Panzer Squad vibes certainly there, which might be just all about Aldrahn, the man doing the vocals and all the stuff. And then there's Trish to do drums, previous of Aldrahn fame, and also string player from the band called Troll. Now, Urarv is quite nice with Argentum, but like I said, I don't feel it has the same kind of a flow or grooviness than the debut album. Certainly, if you liked the debut album, which we have, by the way, reviewed, in case you want to find out what I was thinking of it, then you might just be totally interested in finding what Argentum is all about. But like I said, be warned, this is a little bit more complicated, a little more crazy or insane than its predecessor. And while I like what Aldrahn is totally doing with the vocals, I must say I'm not 100% happy with all the songwriting here. Don't get me wrong, this is definitely a positive album in so many ways and aspects, but after the strong debut, this feels a slight disappointment. Insane and crazy, sure, and a great way to kind of continue where, you know, Panzer Squad left with satanic art and all that stuff before going way too industrial and all that stuff. So, in my opinion, you should give this one a chance, especially if you've ever been into all kinds of Norwegian black metal. But be forewarned, if you are allergic to atypical Nordic black metal, then this might not be your cup of tea. If that makes any sense, do anything you can with that information. Thank you for watching Indie 5 and Rauta channel. See you soon with more reviews to come. Cheers!